Ms. Titus from Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we've heard a lot about fentanyl, which is tragic, certainly. Everybody agrees with that. And also other illegal drugs brought by criminals, brought by drug dealers, brought by cartels. This is a crisis at the border. But I want to go back to something Mr. Swalwell brought up a little bit, just for emphasis. I'd like to remind this hearing and these folks who are here that when this came up for us to consider putting more resources into fighting this drug carrying over the southern border, there were all but two Republicans who are currently serving in this Congress voted against the appropriations bill. All but two voted against it. Now, that appropriations bill had critical provisions to help DHS manage the border. It included $400 million for inspection systems to detect drugs. I'd like to hear from those people who think this is such a big problem, why they didn't vote for the resources to go after it, so we wouldn't have tragedies like the deaths from fentanyl. We wouldn't have the cartels coming over here. We wouldn't have the crisis at the border. We would be doing something about it. But no, only two Republicans voted for those resources in the appropriations bill to deal with these questions, these problems, these crises that you all have mentioned and harped on throughout this hearing. I'd like to change the subject just a little bit to talk about the immigrant communities in this country. I live in Las Vegas. It's an international city. People from all over the world come there, and people from all over the world live there. We have growing populations from Asia as well as from Latin America. They work back of the house, front of the house, gardening. They are contributing members to the community. And I have a lot of mixed status families. You will have one person who is a citizen, one person who is a dreamer, one person on TPS, and one person who may not even know what their status is. But they are all contributing to the economy. Mr. Barrow, would you talk a little bit about some of the ways, positive ways, that immigrants who come here do make contributions to our economy, to our culture, to our society in general?
Of course. I mentioned $250 billion in state and local tax revenues that are paid by these people. They work at higher rates. They are employed in occupations that actually create jobs for other U.S. workers. So if you look at a restaurant, you'll see the immigrants. A lot of times they'll be working in the back of the restaurant, creating jobs for Americans in the front of the restaurant. The same thing goes on across the entire economy. These people are contributors. They're expanding the economy by trillions of dollars every year. That's helping bring down the cost of goods and services, because the more our economy grows, the more items are available on the shelves of every store in America. And that's a benefit directly to Americans.
I just met with the National Franchise Association and the Latin Chamber in Las Vegas. And we were talking about how franchises often help people become more prosperous and contribute to the community because they fund the little league teams and things like that. Most of the franchises in Las Vegas have been opened in the last several years by immigrants, women. Immigrant women are going into small businesses and building those numbers just as you see.
And we know that immigrants are twice as likely to be entrepreneurs than U.S.-born residents. It's part of their culture, right? If you're willing to get up and be entrepreneurial enough to come and change what country you're living in, you are willing to take another risk to start a business and contribute in that way, which also benefits consumers by having another option available to them.
Could you mention briefly, you said it before, but about the guest worker programs that could go all year that might be helpful to areas dependent on tourism like Las Vegas?
Oh, absolutely. So we have two seasonal guest worker programs for non-agricultural and agricultural, but you cannot get a guest worker visa for industries like dairy and livestock that are year-round and have a need throughout the season. Of course, also in Las Vegas, you're dealing with tourism. Again, they're ineligible for these visas because of the fact that you have to show it's a seasonal nature, a temporary job. And so that restriction is ultimately creating this process why people come over to fill those jobs. They're coming in illegally because there's not a legal option available to them.
It's no longer just a season in Las Vegas. It's a year-round.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, you know, the growth of tourism industry in many places, desperate for workers. And you're seeing, I've seen it, I'm sure every member of this committee has seen it, the decline in service as a result of the worker shortage throughout the country.
Thank you very much. I yield back.